Hi, and welcome to a very special live version of uh, Life Talks with Crystal Phoenix. I have got some amazing people here with me. So, um, first, of course, I have to do my wonderful opening clip that the wonderful Erin Gibson has provided for us. And then I will introduce to you my wonderful panel. So today we are talking about narcissistic awareness and how it's affected us in our lives. Originally, the panel was going to be a little larger, I won't lie, but a couple of people are having technical difficulties and hopefully will join us soon. And my beautiful friend Queen Kaylin unfortunately has a really bad headache, so she will not be able to join us today. So I first and foremost, I'm going to introduce my dear sister and wonderful friend, Anastasia. She is the creator of the Expose documentary, which will be premiering soon. The QR codes that I am presenting on each of the memes are to their connections or YouTube channels. So please connect if you feel like anything that we've said resonates with you in any way. And then I'm gonna be also my wonderful friend Scott, who is coming here from down under. He's just an amazing person and has overcome a lot in itself. Dr. Raz is a new friend who does a lot of work with a lot of different people, and I'm so excited to hear what he says. And my beautiful friend Sharon, who's also going to be joining us, and hopefully a few others. So without further ado, I'm going to bring everybody up and so that we can talk to you about different effects of narcissism and how everything affects the world in positive and negative ways. So, hi guys.
Hello. Hi.
Now, everybody forgive me. I mean, this is technically only my third live that I'm hosting, so I'm kind of winging it, especially doing a panel like this. So, forgive me for that.
You're doing amazing.
You're good, Crystal. We got your back. Don't worry.
I know you do. You guys are amazing family. So,
Crystal, can I just mention that since my QR code didn't show up, I just want to let people know that they can connect with me here on LinkedIn. I'm here as Sharon Byrne, so you'll be able to find me easily.
I will make sure to put your link in the chat on the YouTube side.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
So first, I'm actually going to start with Dr. Raz. I don't have a set questions, but because you are my newest connection, I'd like to hear your opinion on narcissistic behaviors and the positives and negatives, because everybody has narcissistic tendencies. It's whether or not it's narcissistic personality disorder or if you're just a confident person.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Crystal, Phoenix, and the other esteemed panelists here. I appreciate the invitation. I am a friend of a friend, and thanks for having me. So, briefly, before I get into the topic and answer your question, let me just introduce myself. I am Jamaican made and American raised, and I am Dr. Ross. That's RAS because I am really a scientist. So, I study traumatic brain injury and neurological diseases. So, from stroke, Alzheimer's disease, perinatal hypoxia, ischemia, seizures, you name it. And what I do, I actually have studied over the life cycle the impact of reproductive hormones, so progesterone, testosterone, so all the reproductive hormones and their impact on neurogenesis as well as recovery of function after brain trauma. So, that's what I've been trained to do from SUNY Binghamton or Binghamton University to Hershey Medical Center at Penn State to Emory University Brain Research Lab to University of Wisconsin as well as the VA hospital. So that's my kind of background and training. And for hormone replacement therapy, there is a company now called Jango Bio, JANGOBIO. You can look it up. That's in Wisconsin, Madison, from all the work that I just said, or from parts of that work, more of the latter part of that work. However, now I reside in College Park, Atlanta, Georgia, or just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a STEM educator and a research scientist. So that's briefly an introduction to myself. And with that, I have a degree in psychology as well, so I guess we can talk about the narcissism, right? And you mentioned something that I think is going to monopolize the conversation is the degree. But before we get to the degree, what are we talking about? What is narcissism? What is it to be narcissistic? And so let me ask. Oh, there we go. So would you like then to? I'll allow you the courtesy to run through your slide here because I think it's very important to start off with the basis before we get into behaviors and anecdotal evidence.
I actually found a few different slides that talk about it. Just give me one moment. There we go. Now, hopefully everybody can see it. But this just talks about the basics of a narcissist, a person who has excessive admiration for oneself. They think they can do no wrong. They have to be the center of attention most of the time. And jokingly, as a Leo, I look at this and I'm like, really? You have to be the center of attention? That's a Leo. What are you talking about? Because if you're in a group, you want to be the one that everybody's focused on and everything. And in a sense, that is narcissism, but there's a time and a place for that too. Having high self-esteem, believing themselves to be better than everybody else, they tend to constantly seek approval and recognition from everyone and may display egocentric and arrogant behaviors. Most true narcissists do not empathize with anybody. They are never wrong. Their feelings are the only ones that matter. And most narcissists cannot have a relationship, like a true lasting relationship, because they are normally all about them, whether it's either in the professional world or in a relationship. It's what can you do for me? They have to get their fix.
Oh,
so
okay. So with that, then
and
can I
is
just?
a slide that just describes the actual disorder.
Yes, go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it. No,
all right. Right before you jump into that, we're going to get into the disorder. Sorry, we'll get into the disorder in a second. I wanted to, just from what you just said now, I'd like the individual panelists, if they could, to just, in a couple sentences, what is a narcissist? to you, all right? Just to define in your mind, in your head, when you think of that, because we have these definitions, we have understandings, but then in actual practice, right? It's really, what do you think that is? So can you, within 2 sentences, if you don't mind, can we just go around and can you articulate in your mind to you what a narcissist or a narcissistic person is? And then we can talk about these scales and limits and things.
Absolutely. But as the host, I'm going to go last. Let's hear from Scott and then go to Sharon and then Anna.
Good evening, good morning here. How are we doing? I think one of the most difficult things about the word narcissism is it gets labeled everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitions get watered down. And we tend to do this across society now. We're very quick to judge. We're very quick to lay a label on somebody. And there's a complete and utter absence of curiosity, which is something that I talk about a lot in my lives. So I'd say it's really hard to define. My personal definition would be the degree of manipulation of another person, and the degree to which that manipulation is almost subconscious, I would say.
That is true. One of the big things with narcissism, in my opinion, is their biggest tool in their toolbox. And that is gaslighting. And right there, what you were just talking about, Scott, with manipulation. Gaslight is the biggest form of manipulation there is, truthfully, because it makes you doubt your feelings, your thoughts, your memories, everything. So I completely agree with that. To me, a narcissist is basically somebody who is all about them. That's a really good question, Alex. Lexi, yes, a narcissist can identify that they are. They just don't care.
They don't. Well, a narcissist can sometimes identify that they're a narcissist, in the sense that the reason I say it that way is because a true narcissist doesn't really think that they have a problem. They don't see it as interfering with their life or affecting anybody else negatively. So it's really a gray area as to whether a narcissist can, really see themselves as a narcissist and having a problem. And
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to your question that you asked, what's a narcissist to me? I would have to say that I agree with Scott. It's really hard to define narcissism because there's so many characteristics. And I personally think that the term narcissism it's become like colloquial in our vocabulary. It's more like just an everyday word to describe somebody that somebody thinks is paying too much attention to themselves and maybe some other general characteristics. So we've really gotten away in our society to what true narcissism is as the personality disorder and as somebody who has narcissistic tendencies, because there's a difference there. But even those differences are muddied because of just the general use of the word narcissism. So I agree with Scott. I think the way he described the fact that the definition of narcissism has gotten watered down, I would have to, agree with that. So, but to me, a narcissist is somebody who really doesn't always know what they're doing. They're aware of what they're doing in the terms of that they're hurting someone, but they're not looking at it that way because they're completely all about their needs. And the other thing about a narcissist, for me and my experience with a narcissist, is they completely turn it around to be on you. Everything that you do is horrible. Everything that you do is negative. Everything that you feel is wrong. And that's what makes them right. And that's what a narcissist is about. They're right fighters. So that to me is how I see it.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry. Absolutely. Before we get to the last answer, I just wanted to comment on something you said in the beginning of your answer about narcissists, which was answering the question, can narcissists actually recognize? And I think you were absolutely right in the fact that they may agree that they have narcissistic tendencies, but they won't recognize that they're a narcissist. They will identify with the tendencies, but because of it's a mind frame. It's a mindset, right? That comes with a number of things that include not only that it in self, but also the lack of empathy for other point of views, right? Because they're locked in their own point of view and they're unable to see from another perspective. So then you cannot gain empathy of that perspective. So I just wanted to add that to what you said in the beginning, just to carry on before.
Absolutely. And the thing is a narcissist is never wrong. They will do everything they can to convince you that they are right. And if you disagree, it's hell to pay. But I'd love to hear Anastasia's viewpoint on this one.
I want the next question. I feel like we already.
Yeah, we did pretty much cover it.
I can just, share a little that, every personality disorder is a reason of some type of trauma, in my perspective. So when we look at the narcissistic personality disorder, somebody with some spectrum of it, we are talking with somebody who is stuck in the past. So you need to have this in your mind that this is not an adult, is a stacked trauma story in a little child. So that's why there is no empathy. There is no way to see from different perspective. There's entitlement, low self-worth because of the trauma, inferiority. But whatever you call those traits, we need to remember it's it's not to label anybody, but just to the awareness helps. And there are people actually, the statistics says 1 or 2% in the world are diagnosed with this narcissistic personality disorder. But we need to take into account that so many people go for therapy. And the reason is that like Dr. Russ said, lack of insight, and also those who go for therapy are forced because of in the United States, when you retire as a military, you have to go through psychiatry evaluation. And that's many cases, many times. At least I interviewed people whose story was like that. They've been diagnosed at the age of 60 something because of who went for the evaluation as they had to retire from the military.
Very, very true. And one of the worst forms of narcissism is parents. When you have like a narcissistic mom or a narcissistic dad, because that affects you from basically almost birth. And it does. It changes you. You don't get to, most kids that have a narcissistic parent don't get to have their normal happy play, happy childhood that a lot of kids do. So I'm just curious how you feel about that. I know, Alex. I get called out on my humming a lot. It's the way my body feels with, stress, anxiety, but it's also just me at this point. I don't even realize I do it.
What you said is actually very interesting, and it made me think, how do you as an individual, or let me ask, do you deal with a narcissist that's in a dominant power position? How do you deal with that as opposed to dealing with a narcissist that's in a subordinate position? So maybe someone that's under you now, but they're a narcissist. How do you deal with that, or is it different dealing with that and the stresses in that as opposed to someone who may have some kind of authority over you?
I think that it's difficult to deal with a narcissist no matter what rung of the ladder they're on. I do think that narcissistic tendencies do tend to lend themselves to a leadership position in a lot of situations. Like, I've been in situations where in my education and other places where I've heard that a lot of doctors, can have narcissistic tendencies, and that actually plays well into their role, because they have to take charge and they have to, kind of rein in the chaos. So if somebody's below you and they're a narcissist, that can create some other issues, in the sense that they're going to challenge you and kind of say that you're not doing your job well enough, or you're not being fair, and they're going to try and maybe push you out in a way so that they can come up and be above you, or be above more people. That's been my experience with, narcissism in the workplace. I just wanted to say also, I happened to see a question, Crystal, about can a narcissist apologize? And if it's all right with you, I just wanted to go ahead and give my perspective on that and my experience with that. Narcissists are not able to apologize very well at all, because they don't think they have anything to apologize for. They truly don't believe that they're doing anything wrong. That's the way they see the world. And believe me, it's painful. I have been in relationships with narcissists. So it's painful to be on the other side and to really it takes a while to get to the point where you can separate from it. Once you have separated from the narcissist, it still takes a while to separate from it and not be angry, and be able to say to understand the way they move in the world. And they really do not think that they have anything to apologize for. So that's my answer to that, my experience with the answer to that question.
I tend to agree, because a narcissist doesn't feel remorse. They will apologize to get their way and love bomb and everything else. They like, in my case, especially my ex, he would do he had a pattern of love bombing. If that didn't get his way, threats, and then the pity party. I'm going to kill myself. You're the only one that can help me. It was a pattern, whichever one would work to get me to do what he wanted. Mm-hmm. So, do they ever truly mean it? I can't say, because in a way, yeah, they might eventually, but
I think it's more part of the manipulation tactic. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do think I'll give them a small piece of credit. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Crystal, but I'll give them a small piece of credit for maybe an inkling of the apology being genuine. But most of what a narcissist does is for their benefit. So the apology isn't genuine. It's being twisted to get you to do what they need you to do for their benefit.
Good question, Mr. Scott. Why didn't you just ask it?
Because everyone else was talking, so I was trying to be,
No. It is a very good question.
Equally, I think those of us that are people pleasers or have trauma responses that result
Guilty.
in people pleasing. Yeah, I think I know one.
I think I resemble that remark.
Tend to fall into the clutches of narcissistic people in relationship. And I think you go from a avoidant to an independent. If that is that the other one? Dependent. That combination's horrible. It's a horrible combination. And I've done that a few times.
So Scott actually called you out on this one. So go ahead, Doctor.
So yeah, to your question, Scott, and that was definitely, you could have verbalized that. But they're definitely to answer this question, as well as I've seen another question in there asking about a chemical imbalance, right? Which I think we need to think about too, because these things are tied together, right? So to answer your question, I think it has to do with the number of attachment, cognitive disorders, right? And so it's not only a avoidant detachment disorder, but even codependency, right, plays a high role in that as well. Because now, what does that do? That reinforces the narcissist and what they're doing, and empowers them and to continue that behavior, and it gets more severe, right? So there's that relationship as well. But to tie in, I wanted to talk and answer that question as well with the chemical imbalance, because the question is, where do you go from narcissistic narcissistic tendencies to a narcissistic disorder? And I say that in the sense of, you think about mild cognitive impairment, right, which is the slowing of the mind with age. Alzheimer's disease is just a more severe degree of that, right? And when it gets to a level of degree that it impacts certain qualities and things that you do in life, and it impacts your ability to live and operate in life, now it becomes a disorder and a disease, right? So I ask then, along the same lines, where and how do you draw that line between these tendencies in a disorder? All right, is it from the individual, or is it the impact the individual is having on the society? How do you draw that line and determine that? Because I think that's important as well.
I've seen studies where it's not a chemical imbalance, that narcissistic behavior can be taught, but at the same time, it's a gray area. And there's different studies, and I can't remember the exact, but the trilogy of the three bads, I guess it's sociopath, psychopath, and narcissist, I believe it is. I know I've got two of them, but I'm pretty sure that's the three. And I've seen quite a few videos and studies on it, and the differences are very slight. That's what's scary about it. And a lot of people are now using the term narcopath for basically narcissistic psychopath. And well, to me, it's a very fine line between the two. But most of the narcissists that I know are truly underlying psychos, because they're all about them and that's it. Like,
Right.
but those are the ones that are like with the narcissistic personality disorder. You know, and they truly believe that the world owes them everything, and that they don't have to work for anything, and they're not wrong, and heaven forbid you stand up to them, and they will put a front that they are perfect, and they make everyone, at least in a relationship, even in a work environment, they will make you look like you're the one that's crazy and get everybody on their side, or at least try to. Eventually, true colors do show, but for the most part, to the outside world, the narcissist is the perfect one, and you're the crazy one. So,
So just to add on, I'm sure someone else wants to speak. Anastasia, seems like you're about to say something.
I just thought about, when you look at on the other side, like imagine you are a narcissistic, like somebody with diagnosed with this disorder. It might mean that you have been through some deep neglect, like the avoidant attachment style, lack of consistent attunement, emotional attunement. And that can create this relationship. The world is your mother, so you crave all of that what you didn't get as a child. It makes sense for me. Actually, it does. Because we see it from the perspective, like, who do you think you are? But on the other side, is like, I didn't get it as a child. please give me this, give me love, tell me I'm great. I feel like shit. Like, it makes sense. That's their story going under, it makes logic.
You know what's interesting on top of that, because you see the example you just gave, right? You can get the same situation from an overbearing parent. So if you now have an overbearing parent that makes the child think that the world is their oyster, right? Now, again, so that's why I say it's a combination. Not saying it's a straight chemical imbalance, but it is a combination of the chemistry, biochemistry, physiology of the brain, and learned behavior. Because you can get from an avoidance, condition where now you have this, as well as an overbearing, too much loving condition, and now you have this over expectation of the world for your needs, and now you can't be wrong. You're in the same situation from two polar opposites, which I think is interesting about what we're talking about as far as the condition of narcissism.
Very true. I actually want to hear more along with what Anna was talking about, because it reminded me a lot of my ex, because he was raised in a broken home and went through a lot with that. And I know his mom, and I know damn well that his mom did not raise him to be the way he was. But at the same time, he did have a rough childhood. And I knew him back in school, and he was always an ass. So, but he wasn't as horrible as he was. And I had noticed in the comments somebody had made about how can addiction or like drug abuse or anything bring on narcissistic traits. And I actually am tending to believe yes, just from my own personal experiences, because certain drugs do completely alter your brain in very, very different ways. And after my ex started getting in really heavy into it, the narcissistic tendencies and traits came out and amplified times 1,000. So I do think that a lot of that stuff can be brought out by different chemical use and such stuff like that. And yes, I saw your hand, Sharon. I just wanted to get my thought out first.
You're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, no, it's fine, Crystal. There's no raise your hand thing to, So I just wanted to say that we all, even though we're talking about the effects of narcissists on us or on society, I really think in order to be fair, we have to talk about the narcissist, how they get there, and all that. And so what I wanted to say is that narcissism, to an extent, because I've done a lot of research on this, a lot of studying, and so narcissism becomes a survival mechanism, and I don't think we give that enough credit, because we all have trauma in our life, we all have experiences, and so we all have had to come up with ways to survive. And for a narcissist, it is a survival mechanism, because underneath all of that, bravado and I'm great is really somebody who feels no bigger than an ant or a fly. Their self-esteem and their self-confidence is like way down on the ground. You would never know, like you will never know it outwardly. They will not project that to most of the world, but it's really there. And as far as it being a chemical imbalance, I do believe there is some element of chemical imbalance, but here's why. Because our experiences as children or even as adults change our chemistry in our brain. So yes, it can be a genetic or biological, genetic component, but experiences and situations alone change our, physiology. So I just, I didn't want to interrupt anybody. That's why I was patiently waiting. But I do think if we're going to have this conversation, then we need to have it from both sides. And narcissists are very hard to deal with. I've been I was in a marriage with a narcissist, and he completely annihilated my self-confidence and my self-esteem and made me codependent on him to even feel remotely good about myself, and made me feel like I had to rely on him to be safe, like I could no longer trust myself. But on the same token, as much as I talk about that effect, it took me years, as I said, to separate it all. But I really can see just how much his self-esteem doesn't exist and didn't exist. So I just wanted to bring up that side as well.
That is very true.
Can I just grab that?
I was actually going to bring the mic over to you anyway, Scott. So go for it.
Yeah, I was mind reading you. Yeah, I think that's the identification piece is really interesting, Sharon, because I think one of the things I'd like to get out of this conversation is I've most definitely fallen into particularly relationships where, I've been the anxious attacher and then there's been an avoidant attacher. And that's been bloody horrific for me. But, and probably natural for us to do so. Probably natural for us to, as anxious attachers, to continue to go after that connection, even though the rewards aren't quite there yet. But I think one of the things I'd really like to pursue in this conversation is that and I keep coming back to it, but one of the things that we lack an awful lot of in this world is curiosity. And what I'd hate to see is more blanket approaches to labeling people narcissistic, in opposition to, or to the alternate being to curiously explore personalities before arriving at a situation where we've declared somebody unworkable. We talk about people in leadership positions, Sharon, being narcissistic. A lot of the corporate world rewards people who value tasks over people. And if you can sustain that as a leader, if you can sustain that vibe where you don't frankly give a shit about people, you are likely to survive the elements. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're narcissistic. It does mean you're selling your soul for success potentially. But it doesn't mean that you're evil. It means that as a means of survival, you've adopted a way of thinking and doing. I know that in business, some of the interactions that I've had with people have been brutal in commercial situations. I've been brutal. I've been an asshole. The groundwork is set for that in some environments, in some commercial environments. So I think what I'd really like to get away from, however, is that we have too much disconnection in the world. Right. And one of the things that intrigues me about terms like narcissism, or intergenerational trauma, or wow, I've never met so many people. We invent a label and everyone grabs it. It reminds me, not to be cynical, but it reminds me a little bit of when celiac disease was epically popular. So is there as a medical identification for things, and then there's a belongingness, and I think we do a lot of it rather than a curious exploration. So hell, it was getting so bad in food, we actually changed "I'm a maniac" from Flashdance to "I'm a celiac" in a song in the office one day. Well, she's a maniac, I should say. But yeah, I think one of the difficult things, particularly when you've got a certain personality type and you're carrying forward your own trauma of connection, is knowing you're in it. Is knowing that you're in it, and knowing that, because for someone like myself, if someone's telling me I'm doing something wrong, that's a very familiar exchange for me. That's an exchange I was raised with. That's an exchange that I could handle more than most. And often, sometimes my response to that can be brick wall, but on the inside, I can't be around it for long. I can't be around that kind of feedback for too long. So what I'm interested in is how do we all firstly take our own self-awareness into situations and understand the impacts that others are having on us, and how much of that baggage is ours to claim at the carousel of life. And then on the alternative view is, at what point do we recognize the person is unshakable, immovable, that we can't work with it. And that's a tough thing because, I've been around psychographic measurement of people and behavior for 30 years, or 20 years or something like that, 25 years. And I still individually get myself into scenarios like that, where, I should be assessing that perhaps more accurately than most, you might think.
Mm-hmm.
To what you said, Scott, I do think that we have as responders to interactions with people, because you can either respond, or you can be responsive, or you can be reactive. And I think one of the things that I'm working on, and a lot of it came from me breaking away from that relationship, is being responsive to something and less reactive, because reactiveness comes from our emotions, where responsiveness comes from waiting to respond until we have our emotions, kind of in, more in check. And so, I do think it is our responsibility to kind of be aware of our baggage that we bring into every interaction, and it's the only thing we can control is how we respond to people around us and how we let their interaction with us affect us. We cannot control another human being. And so I do think that it is our responsibility to be aware of to be more self-aware and to be more aware of how we respond. But I also believe this on both sides. We have to be gentle and kind with the other people, the people that we're dealing with. And we also have to be gentle and kind and patient with ourselves. We're all human, and we're not going to always react the way we want to react or respond the way we want to respond. So I think it plays on both sides. So.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, you made a really good point when it came to all the labels. When I was a teenager, they tried to label me with borderline personality. So I did what I do best. Most of you that know me know I like my research. And I researched it. And to me, it was just so broad that it felt like a lazy diagnosis, honestly, because there's so many things in it. Sis AJOT, I know that you've been diagnosed with it. It frustrates me because it's such a broad diagnosis, just like narcissistic tendencies, because like I said, everybody has narcissistic tendencies. If you're overconfident in a situation, you could be labeled a narcissist. If you feel really strongly about something and you don't back down, somebody could call you a narcissist because of it. So like you said, labels don't work. It's just a matter of whether you treat people kindly or not, treat people with respect, because especially in the business world, yes, it's a dog-eat-dog world in a lot of it, but at the same time, you shouldn't necessarily be labeled a narcissist because you're a shrewd business person, do I feel that a lot of businesses need to be more people-centered than they are? Yes. I feel that they should care more about their employees than the bottom dollar. But at the same time, it's that bottom dollar that pays their employees' paycheck. So it's a balance. And that's how it is even with all of it, with any personality. You have to find balance. And there are days where my anxiety and my PTSD and depression can get the better of me. Just like Sister Nick was saying that she struggles sometimes dealing, with her bipolar. Every diagnosis is exactly that. It's a box that they're putting us in. Whether or not we decide to stay in that box and let those diagnoses, label us and be us, and rule our lives and define us, or we just keep going and just keep moving and working through it. So really quick, I do want to thank everybody for coming and supporting us, both my YouTube community. Thank you so much for being here and for modding, and all of our very wonderful LinkedIn friends. This is an amazing group that everybody is together and supporting, and I just truly appreciate it. And the comments in the chat are very insightful, and it brought up a lot of wonderful. Hello, Eli. Yes. Progressive Patriot is a YouTuber who we dated in middle school, and ironically, I was on his and Josh, who was supposed to be on tonight, but his computer crashed. That was the technical difficulty. Show speaking for Anastasia and Expose 2 years ago. I was trying to bring, that was the Stuck at Night show that I did, and everything. So, but I wanted to say thank you, everybody, for showing up and being so supportive. And the questions that you guys have been putting in the chat are amazing, and very insightful, by the way, from both sides. So,
yeah. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep laboring this point. Back some years ago, I was in a corporate and they paid this person extreme amounts of money to give me a style guide for how I need to show up, how I need to dress, and so on. And please, I mean, it's a public holiday here today. For everyone's general knowledge, it's the King's birthday, so holiday in Melbourne, Australia. So, yeah, that really horrified me when that happened, because I was subsequently told that, people make up 85% of their mind about you by how you look when you walk into a room. Further to that, I just want to point out a recent experiment that I did on LinkedIn. We have some, and I believe you guys in the US do too at the moment, some, let's say, opportunistic pricing happening in supermarkets at the moment based on inflation. And in Australia, we have a distinct lack of competition. So beautiful beaches, friendly people, supermarket shopping sucks. So I put this little article in LinkedIn about how our supermarkets or retailers were going to charge a surcharge for air conditioning in the summer. And it killed me. And if you actually had read the article further in, I talked about the potential introduction of an oxygen charge based on time in store in 2026. So at that point, you had to know I was joking. It was all satirical. But about 95% of the comments were based on the headline, not the content. So that was just believed. Now, the reason I chose that is that people are so annoyed and so angry about where grocery prices particularly have gone to post-pandemic here, that they were like, that would be right, an air conditioning charge. Right? It was close enough to proximity to be believable, right? But what fascinated me is the amount of people that didn't dig any further. And so we come back to putting people in boxes and all that sort of stuff and go, wow, we've got to be really careful, because we do this all the time to be efficient in our connections. And it keeps us at odds with each other and away from each other and isolated and lonely and suicidal. And, at the end of the day, if we enter the world ready to fire at everybody because they're all a threat, we're going to be incredibly, excuse the French, fucking miserable. That isn't French for those of you that don't speak.
For those of you that know me, I have a potty mouth. Never apologize for cursing in my room. I appreciate it though. But yeah,
we learn it in school here. Yeah.
It's Scott. It's interesting the point that you make, and I just wanted to say that what you're saying, we have to deal with in the educational system and trying to be able to teach, because this is how information is digested now, because there's so much information, right? It's this browsing. And now how can you teach anyone something in depth, right? How can you specialize in anything when everyone is just browsing, as you're saying? So it's a problem that goes beyond just the personal interaction between personalities, but that we're even dealing with on a systematic level as well. So good point.
Scott,
I wanted to also add that there's a huge cultural factor as well. We're living, like, I'm in the United States, but like, for example, there's a research showing that people who are coming from war in Africa, they develop less PTSD when they come back to the village, when they're like, the village is welcoming them and they're all like surrendering them, and for them, when military is coming back to like different villages, when there's a lack of support, there's more cases with PTSD and different mental disorders, including narcissism. Like, there's also that component as well. Like, I wanted to add that because what Scott mentioned, that we all have, narcissists in us, and I totally agree with that. And it's just being able to see yourself through the lens of truth and get to know who you truly are. So the whole conversation, I feel like, gosh, anybody, whoever you're listening, you have been diagnosed with a mental disorder, this is just to share awareness and help us evolve towards better understanding of each other and spread more love. That's what it is for me.
Really good point, Anna. We're not here to judge anybody or put anybody down. We're here to elevate awareness and hopefully gain some, tolerance and understanding. And that brings me to a point that I wanted to go back to, that I think it was you, Scott, who mentioned labels. And I've been labeled all my life. I was born with a disability. So from 18 months on, I had my label of being, having cerebral palsy. And that label, if I would have allowed it to, and at first, if my parents would have allowed it to, would have completely dictated my life trajectory, because based on that label, people were telling my parents and me what I was going to be able to do and what I wasn't going to be able to do. And believe me, I wouldn't be on this panel tonight, anywhere near this panel, or doing anything I've done in my life if my parents believed all of that and listened. But I do want to say, I am not big on labels at all. But that's because labels get a bad name, okay? Because labels, the intent of labels is to provide information and understanding, and, to categorize things in a way that people, like, for instance, when I understood my label of cerebral palsy, I was able to understand why I was having difficulty with some things that I was having difficulty with. So that knowledge gave me power, in the sense that I didn't blame myself for something that I had no control over. So it's not the labels that are the problem. It's how the labels are being utilized, because a label is supposed to level the playing field. For instance, when somebody is diagnosed with bipolar or narcissism or CP or anything, or ADHD, it's supposed to give the people around them who know about that label information about how they move in the world or how they process things, so that they can be better understood and be approached in a way that they can succeed. But it's what we do with the label that is the problem. It is not the label itself.
Yes, that's a very brilliant point. Absolutely.
And Sharon and I both, we just took part in a anthology called Moving Beyond Boxes, and it's talking about exactly that, breaking away from the labels that people place on us, or that we place on ourselves. And Sharon's story but all of the stories were amazing, but Sharon's story really talks about moving away from labels of, especially like disabilities and personality disorders and things like that. You know, because that's what narcissism is. But I do want to kind of move forward and bring up like the certain red flags, because there, like we've said, there are two sides to every coin, but at the same time, narcissists do a lot of damage to people when they are in the evil mindset, I guess you could call it. That's just the best way I could put it. And I was just wondering if anybody would like to share, red flags that you personally know, to share with our viewers so that they can be aware and watch out, So I'm gonna answer this one last, but I'd like to hear from each of you, just like 2 or 3 red flags that you personally know, when it comes to narcissistic tendencies that can warn you to be like, maybe not, maybe I should go the other way, so that you don't end up getting hurt.
Hmm? So, I can start off, but so I think there's 2 categories when you talk about this. There's situational flags, and then there are like personal flags. So if you know a narcissist, there are certain things that you can tell. There's certain behaviors or quirks that will be initiated or signal they're kind of in that mode or that kind of attitude. And from that experience, it usually might be in a situation where you haven't done anything or you haven't impacted the situation any. However, there seems to be a overemphasis on what you have done and how you was wrong in this situation. So producing a situation for them to be narcissistic in, right? So there's things like that where there are personality traits that you're going to notice with that individual. And then there's also situational traits, right? So when you go through situations, you can even yourself start to predict and you know what? Let me avoid. I'm not even going to put myself, and I don't know if anyone wants to divulge any particular situation, but you can even anticipate and say, you know what? I'm not even going to make this situation come to life because I know what it's going to lead to based on these kind of things that you can notice. So I'll just put the framework for it in that.
This might sound really counterintuitive, but I don't know that I could say that I have 3, definitive red flags for somebody being a narcissist. And here's why. Because my experience with the narcissistic people that I've experienced in my life, it was an insidious thing. The people that I was around that were narcissists, they projected a different facade out in the world than they did behind closed doors with me, whether that was in the work environment or in my personal life. So it wasn't until much later that I was able to say, wait a minute, these things are narcissistic tendencies or behaviors. Some of the things that I eventually saw were things like I've already mentioned, but I'll mention them again. The people that were in my life, especially my ex-husband had a saying. One of his favorite sayings was, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. So, it was things like that started to resonate in my head, and say, hey, wait a minute, no, this is not how I function. But so it's really hard, I think. And I want to put that out. I want to put this out here tonight because I want to give people red flags that they can look at, but I also want people to understand that if they're not able to see the red flags, don't beat yourself up, because I did. For years, I beat myself up because I promised myself, even before I got into a relationship with my ex-husband, even before we were friends and dating, I said I would never fall into a relationship like that I would always see the signs and I would always keep myself away from that situation. And so it took I beat myself up for years because I didn't see it and I did fall into it. And it took me a long time to gain myself back again after I left that situation for two reasons. One, because of what the narcissistic relationship did to my inner being, and also because I was beating myself up for even having fallen into that situation. So I can't really give you three distinct red flags.
And that is actually what I was hoping you would go to, because it's true. There are no true red flags when it comes to narcissists, because most narcissists will, in the beginning especially, they will play to your likes, your wants. They will uplift you in every way possible to where you don't see the red flags. They make you think they're your perfect mate. They uplift you so high and everything else. And then they start to isolate you and you don't realize what's going on until it's too late. And that was, you basically just brought up the point that I was hoping somebody would. There are no true telltale signs when it comes to, figuring out if you're, if they're a freaking narcissist or not. You see all these panels and these quizzes online, or are you dating a narcissist? Well, by the time you get to that point, you're already in so deep, and a lot of times questioning everything about your life, your relationships, everything, that there's no point on questioning it. It's whether or not you can deal with the relationship that you're in, period, and be able to move forward. And the whole box about narcissists, yeah, it sucks. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to recognize whether or not we can handle our significant other's personality traits, whether it's bipolar, whether it's depression, whether it's, narcissistic traits. It's at the end of the day, are you able to handle it? Do you want to work things out? Abuse to me is a different thing. Yes, narcissistic abuse, mental abuse is horrible in every way. And like I said, it all depends on the level of, the personality disorder and how they treat you, on whether or not you're going to be able to handle it, whether or not you want to stay, and whether or not you feel strong enough mentally to be able to leave. So, but you made a very valid point, and it does it. And you wonder, how could I have fallen for that person? Because by the time you realize what they are, you're so far into it. You wonder, how did I fall in love with them? And then you look back and it's like, oh, wait, they weren't like that in the beginning because they didn't show their true colors.
This might
Very
not
valid question, Scott.
this might not absolve everything that you said, but I think one through line is that someone that's dealing with a narcissist, you'll realize or come to realize, whether you're in a state that now I'm codependent and it's hard to get out of, what you'll realize is you're never right. That's one consistent thing. If you're dealing with a narcissist, you're never right. So if you look across the board of the things that you do in your interactions with them, and you could never be right, it's most likely you're dealing with. So I would say that's the number one thing across the board.
That is true. If heaven forbid you have a differing of opinions at all, they will wage war to make you.
Can't have I guess that would be another red flag. Now that I'm thinking about it, with a narcissist, you can't have an opinion. Literally, you cannot have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They will shut you down, make you feel stupid, make you. It's just, it doesn't happen. And Scott, I saw your question as to, can you handle it or can they? And I just want to say that I think it's a combination, because they need to be able to learn how to cope with their diagnosis, whatever the diagnosis is. In this case, we're talking about narcissism, and you need to be able to appreciate the person you're with, whether it's a romantic person or a friend. You need to be able to appreciate what their needs are going to be, and know whether you can handle what their needs might be at any given time. Because sometimes somebody's going to need you to give 10%, and other times they're going to need you to give 100%. So you need to know if you can handle that. Like, in terms of myself, whenever I was dating someone, they obviously saw my wheelchair, so they knew they were dealing with somebody with a mobility impairment. But I put it all on the table with very quickly about everything, even the things they couldn't see that were related to my disability. Because if they didn't want to be involved, or if they felt like it was going to become too much, I wanted to know early on, because I wanted to be able to move on, and I wanted them to be able to move on. So I think it's a combination of, can they handle it, and will they be able to cope, and will they be willing to get the help that they need, and can you handle it as well? Because whenever we're in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, it takes two to be in any interaction. So you both have to do the work.
All of these are really valid and amazing points. We are getting close. We're going past an hour, and I do actually, really quick, I want to spotlight Anastasia and ask her what's coming up with Expose Network and media production. Tell us a little bit about what's going on, because I know we've got some really good things in the works. I kind of said, hold my beer when you told me what your ideas, and I went, really? Let's go. So I'd like to hear where we're going from here, because you know how dear this Expose documentary is to my heart. I dedicated my chapter in Moving Beyond Boundaries to you and the documentary because of how important it was to me and everything. So I'd love to hear where we're going from here.
Sure, I still will respond just in 30 seconds to the red flags, because I was listening, absorbing all of that, and I think it's really important to
Absolutely
what we are doing here. So I was 19 when I got in my first narcissistic relationship, and I was living in Spain. I just moved. I was very naive, looking for friends, and overshare everything. So and why I did fall for that? Because I didn't feel important. I had low self-esteem. I didn't feel like my life mattered, and I was looking for something out there shining to give a meaning to my life. So I like to point that, because there's many reasons why we fall for that, and we are trying many times to restore the exact feeling we are feeling as a child, to create a different solution, a different outcome out of it. And and until we become really aware of that, it's really hard to break the cycle. So we keep missing red flags. We see red flags with the mind, but subconsciously we are drawn. It's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So
people always joke women fall in love with men that are just like their fathers, and men fall in love with women like their moms.
And then the Freud is ha ha ha.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, subconsciously, we do look for those traits that we're most comfortable with, or what's missing. Because yes, I know your story, Anna, and I know you've shared it in the documentary, you've shared it in LinkedIn audio room and in your book and everything. but you were led to the elder gentleman because of your dad passing away when you were so young, and you were trying, yeah. In a lot of ways, my
And
ex reminded me of my
I
father.
tried to save, there was many things, but you know, that. Sorry, I interrupted you. I like
Go for
interrupting.
Go ahead.
That was it. Actually, I just wanted to add that that just speaking and becoming aware. I even now speaking develop some kind of weird feeling in my throat, which I have been sharing my story for the last 4 years therapy, and there are still some layers in coming out from my body, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm getting nervous. Wow. Like, this is like, doesn't make sense. I'm sweating here. Like, my body is going through something, even though I'm safe. Like, I know I'm totally safe, but it's where we think we are logical, we are emotional. And it's, I can give you a list. You can Google red flags, isolation, love booming, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's really the connection within yourself and coming back to home, connecting with who you are.
And that is really true. Sharon can vouch for the fact that all day I've been on edge because I have, been putting a lot of pressure on myself for this live because it's really important to me, just because of the topic, because I wanted to feature, trying to get the exposure for the Expose Media Network and everything. I mean, if you haven't noticed, the Expose channel has been going across the screen all night. I've had that as the banner rotating for pretty much the whole live. Trying to, get people to subscribe to the channel because it is so important to me. But yeah, your nerves are there where you're anxious, you're excited for talking, but at the same time, we still have that fear. And, I know I have it, of rejection, of people not believing or people judging. And, I've been sharing my story now for 3 years. Thank you, Anna, for, getting me started. And I would love to say that it gets easier every time we share, and it does in a way, but it doesn't, because that subconscious worry, are they going to come after me for talking about what I went through with them, whether we name them or not? There's so many different things that are activating in our nervous system as we're bringing back those memories and those scars, that yes, it does help us heal. I mean, the big thing that I said to you when we were doing my interview for Expose is that if sharing my story can help one person get hope and, get out and help them to start to heal, then what I went through was worth it. And I still to this day feel that way. But at the same time, that lingering fear in the back of my mind that he's going to come after me for talking about it is still there, but it doesn't stop me anymore. So I do get the whole nervous system activating every time you share, because it's just those underlying fears and everything else that we have. That's just my opinion anyway.
Can I add to both of you guys' point there, which you just said? I hope I'm not talking too much, but Anastasia made an important point about, and this is where the epigenetics and stuff come in from, but this, like, trauma and experience, you think about things that you experienced before you can verbalize them, right? It still impacted you emotionally. It still impacted you cognitively, whether you had the words to express what that mean or not. And that will come out later on when you revisit these feelings and these ideas and thoughts. And so that's very important. And the other thing I wanted to say was we have to also remember and talk to individuals about that's been in relationships with individuals like this. You have to learn to trust again. right? That's a big important thing as well, as far as moving on and healing, is learning how to trust again. So if we can talk about that a little bit, I think is important too.
Well, may I add first, Anna, I know that we haven't met each other before today, but I want to let you know that I am honored to get to know you. And I want you to know that I have your experience, as Crystal has shared, in the sense of every time I share any aspect of my story, whether it's the disability angle and how that affected me, whether it's being in a narcissistic relationship, whatever it is, I have physiological feelings that come up even now, or psychological things that come up. And when I was writing my chapter for Moving Beyond Boxes, the first draft, Crystal can tell you, the first draft was very different from the final published draft. And each draft, there were 4 drafts, and each draft was emotionally draining. It was healing. It was healing, because for me, writing is always something I've done to heal, even from a very young age. But it was also emotionally draining and brought me back to certain situations, like I was right there experiencing them again in the moment. So kudos to you for continually sharing your story. And I want to encourage you to continue, even with all those feelings, and know that those feelings will come up, and they will change over time. But don't be surprised if sometimes they get really vivid and intense again, because that just speaks to the gravity of how you were affected by it. So
what you're referring to is what we like to call as authors, when you get stuck in your narrative, when you get stuck in your story. You and a couple of other people had to actually kind of help pull me out of my story for Beyond Boxes.
Yeah.
Remember, both of our chapters were massively different from rough draft to end, because you do. Scott can actually speak to this particular topic that we are on, because when I first met Scott, he was writing a book about men and different situations. I don't remember exactly what, but I do remember it was something along like these lines that we're talking about. And because the stories were so hard and everything and triggering, you stopped writing it. Actually, you stopped the project, if I remember correctly from what you were telling me. Now, this was about 2 years ago, so my memory is not the best.
Yeah, I think, so what happened for me is that I started a blog rather innocently. I was approached by a publisher to snap out a book. They were adamant that I was about men's health. I felt awkward would be an understatement to be representing that cause. And a friend of mine killed himself about 2 months into writing. And unfortunately, the truth is that's not an unfamiliar scenario. People of my vintage, I think he's friend number 7, if I recall correctly. But it was more the way our mutual friends responded, or the stories they told me about where he was and where they thought he was, and the things that I felt they didn't pick up that had me stop. So in curiosity, I just wondered to myself whether some of my thinking about men's challenges was right or not. And considering that, I've been in and around and on the soapbox of talking about exploration of human beings and being curious, I did 100 interviews with 100 guys in 100 days. And yeah, some of those days were pretty hard. Some of those days were like, whoa, what? But from that, I decided that I didn't want to create something that would be polarizing or divisive. So I decided to do a podcast, and I would sort out a female psychologist to do it with, so that we could speak about men and women with curiosity, with no conclusive answers, but talking about things that people don't really talk about. What stops people from communicating about intimacy? I'll give you a more extreme example. Is polyamory a statement of evolution or a statement of us recoiling into insecurity? Which one is it? I think there's a lot of what we have in society today, and where I'm really careful about. There is too much labeling, right? There's just too much labeling, and I think it's really, if we've learned anything in this generation about modern psychology and how to apply it in life, we surely must have learned that more information can make it easier, but can make it harder for us to connect to. So I'm up for easy, and trying to get rid of. I didn't say I was easy, just saying, but I'm up for making connection easier by remaining in curiosity about what happens. And quite rightly pointed out before, a lot of these expressions are expressions of childhood trauma. So you could be neglected or whatever might be the case, and you can respond in different ways. You can go out energetically seeking that connection, or you can go out assuming that it will never happen, or you can go out assuming that because it will never happen, that there's no point in investing in others. So there's a whole range of things around that, and I feel like with one of the stats out of the men's piece that got me, and I will say, and I have to say as a bit of a research nerd, that I wouldn't say it was a representative sample of men, because I'd ask guys to come forward and talk to me about their life, so there's a bit of a pre-selection there anyway, and more than 50% of those men had asked me to if I could speak again, and I had to remind them that I wasn't a psychologist or a therapist. But the fact that I just held space and listened to their stories was really valuable to them. But what I learned is that of those guys, 94 out of 100 of them said they didn't want to be like dad. And I'd hypothesized that in my generation, I don't know whether the number's just as high, but it would be pretty high amongst women who don't want to be like mum. And so here we are navigating a life where we have no framework, or we at least have the opposite of the framework. I know what it is I don't want to be. I don't know what it's like to be the opposite of what I don't want to be and be happy. Whilst, I think women suffer from very similar challenges. And again, once we start labeling, and, at my vintage, dating right now is a nightmare. And it's understandable that people can come out of toxic, damaging, psychologically damaging relationships and be on guard, but it's nigh impossible to be with. You can't functionally grow if somebody's, if the slightest flare means X, Y, Z multiplied by 3 to the factor of 10. I mean, you can't deal with that shit. And we all make up stories, right? But in the same way, and very simplistic way, that we make up stories about people who are vulnerable. They must be lazy. They must be idiots. Why are they on drugs? What's wrong with them? Why didn't they? And so when we lack curiosity, we're unable to connect with each other. And I'm not opposed to talking about narcissism. I'm very pro it. We do have more and more, or less and less, regard for each other today. I'm curious in my field, where I talk about how do we show up and serve other people in our businesses. I have this inherent, call me crazy, but I have this inherent belief that if we rock up and present our best selves with care to other people, that the money takes care of itself in business. And it happens so seldom. I'm wondering at the moment, in my generation, we talk about good old-fashioned service. I don't think my 15-year-old daughter knows what that is. I don't know that she is and has a framework to return to. I don't know what the next 20 years brings, but I sure as shit don't think it's going to bring connection unless we start talking about each other really differently.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. I think you bring up many good points, Scott. And I think we can tie your point into Dr. Raz's question of how do you know who to trust? Because you have to learn to trust again. And I can tell you that trust has always been a major issue for me, because growing up, because of my disability, I was relentlessly bullied. So I trusted no one during that part of my life. And then I finally broke through and gave my unconditional trust to somebody who completely annihilated that trust again. So trust is something that I still struggle with. However, to Dr. Raz's point, the person that I had to learn to trust the most was myself. Because if I learn to trust myself, then I can trust anybody or any interaction. Because if the interaction doesn't go well and that person messes with me, or something happens that I'm not expecting and it's a negative thing, I trust myself to be able to get out of it. And I also trust myself. Yeah, I'm going to have my moments of being down on the ground and, being very depressed or whatever, but I trust myself to rise up again. So to trust others, you have to trust yourself first. So that's, I think that goes with, that answers your question, Dr. Raz, from my perspective, and it ties into what you were saying, Scott, because we do have to interact with people in business, and, not everybody is out there to serve, and yes, this generation or the younger generation, they don't know a lot about serving others, because it's been a very, for lack of a better word, I don't mean this as harshly as it's going to come out. It's been a very entitled generation in a lot of ways. But I don't think it's all lost. I think that through having conversations like this is how we're going to bring back some of what we have lost, because it's partially our responsibility, because the younger generation is looking up to us, and the younger generation also has a lot of wisdom, and we need to be willing to listen to them, because just as much as we can teach them, they can teach us. So there needs to stop being this generation gap of you don't know anything because you're too young, and I know everything because I've experienced everything. We need to come together. And the one last thing I want to say is, another way we need to do this is we need to start from the foundation of we're all human. If we started from the foundation of we're all human, we would get a lot further in our connections, in this world, in life, because we all bleed the same blood. We all have the same common 3 basic needs of, connection, feeling validated, a sense of belonging, being loved. If we start there, can you imagine what we can do? But we're too busy picking each other apart and becoming each other's adversaries. If we all have if we all have the same common goal, why can't we focus on the goal and not argue over how you plan on getting there versus how I plan on getting there? There's more than one path to each end. So, yeah.
I knew I liked you.
Did you ever doubt me, Scott? Come on now.
Oh no, I didn't mean you.
Yes, because I'm 5 and yes. Comedic relief right here. See, when you were saying like the 3 common basic needs, honestly, Sharon, what went through my head is what? Eat, sleep, and shit. And yes, I'm gotta add a little bit of comedic relief, and I'm always good for that. But it is true. And honestly, when we collaboration versus competition, when we collaborate and work together to get from point A to point B, we make a much bigger impact, because each and every one of us brings a different piece to the puzzle. And you can make a beautiful 3D puzzle of Hogwarts. And I'm saying that because one of our HK in the chat brought up Hogwarts and Dementors and everything. So I figured I'd just kind of run with it. But, you can make a beautiful 3D puzzle of Hogwarts Castle. But if you're missing even 3 pieces, it's going to come tumbling down, in the wrong places. So if we all collaborate, those pieces can come together and we can have a much better impact on not just our community, but, in a broader spectrum. So, but when it comes to overcoming like narcissistic abuse, whether it's in the workplace or in your own relationship, it's very valid. The first thing you have to do is learn to trust yourself and, stop second guessing every decision. Should we have spaghetti or macaroni and cheese tonight? And you can't answer that because you're so used to having to, be told what you're doing. Because when you're in that kind of a relationship, it's like if you make the wrong move, it'll be hell to pay, whether it's physical or mental, So you have to learn to stop looking for validation outside and start validating yourself and trusting your gut feeling and your decisions, and yeah, I'm still bad about it. I still say, question my decisions and my statements, but at the same time, I've come a long way. So have all of us. You have to learn, relearn how to trust yourself. And one of the things that I tell my clients is if you can't, it's not easy. So building a good support system is key. And a lot of times when you leave a abusive relationship, one of the first things you get that happens when you're in a narcissistic relationship, especially, is you get isolated from your true friends, your true family, your ride or die, because not all family is blood. In fact, a lot of times your blood family isn't as loyal as the family you make. And, reaching out to those people that you pushed away in that relationship, you'd be surprised because they will support you and let you come home. Even it may not be physically come home, but they will be there and they will support you and show you that, yeah, there still are good people out there that you can trust that have your back. And, that is one of the key ways to be able to start trusting yourself again when you have a good support system around you that will validate and be like, or even call you on it, be like, okay, no, what you're doing is right. Stop second guessing yourself. Sometimes it does take a little bit of that tough love, of being told, hey, what you're doing. Stop worrying about it. In fact, Sharon said that to me 2 days ago. But that's okay because having that support system, it leads you to realizing once again, yes, there are good people that you can trust, that you can, love. And in the business world, well, honestly, yes, you want to trust your business partners, but at the same time, you always have to keep your eyes open no matter what. It's a dog eat dog world. Yes, when you sign a contract with somebody, you hope that they keep their word on their end. But at the same time, you always have to keep your eyes open. Doesn't mean you distrust. But in your interpersonal relationships, you have to learn to trust yourself first and surround yourself with a good support system until you can. That's my big thing when it comes to that.
I think we just want to go back to Sharon's point about starting with self. And I think we all have to recognize that we are at X basis points from our natural being because of what's happened to us, because of the things we've experienced, because of the relationships we've had. We are some way apart from our original being. And the same goes when I do business coaching online around strategy. I say to people, you've already been a great strategist. You're about 5 or 6. It ain't hard. You just got to ask more questions, keep your eyes open, and question status quo. That makes for good strategy. In fact, to bring that back to child, in that state, you're in the perfect state. And the things that take us away from that are the things that happen to us, sometimes for us. And I once worked with a therapist who used to say, Scott, we're all just walking ourselves home to our hearts. And I feel that statement's a real precious gift in the context that if we are just walking ourselves home to our hearts, if that is the adventure of life, if that is the goal, right, it is mine to be the truest expression of myself that I can be. Because I accept that when, in the beginning, I was as perfect as I was ever going to be. But you have, people hurt you and you become jealous or you become anxious or you become insecure. It's about overcoming those things and going back to the nature and essence of who we truly are. And if someone's going to walk with us home to our hearts, then let them walk. If someone's going to take us away from that, then we can leave them at the T junction. Yeah. And when it comes to business, let me be uber clear that one of the things that I do in business meetings and even in interviews, right? I care and want to work with people who give a shit, right? So when I interview somebody, I had to explain this to a new assistant started with me a couple months ago, and we were interviewing this person to help us with something, and I said, I just want to take you through the methodology of what you just experienced. So a bit of a cheat sheet for anyone who wants to work with me in the future. I will spray my passion and vigor and desire to make a difference, and I will give it to you in droves. It's efficient. You know why? I watch how you react and I watch your energy. And if you ain't on the train, you ain't on the train. Yeah, I don't give a shit about what skills and competencies and certificates and degrees you've got. If I don't feel that same energy coming back at me, you're done. So that sounds brutal, right? But it's actually founded in heart. Yeah, and there are people that go through the system and get tainted by the system. There's guys, I got good mates of mine who have worked for big corporates for their whole life, and God bless them. What they've been able to do that I could not, right, is they've been able to put their families and their families' prosperity ahead of the discomfort they feel on a daily basis to do what they got to do. I can't. I just haven't been able to, which is my flaw potentially, right? I go into corporate, I go into meetings, I want to have a shower, I want to vomit. I can't. I can't participate and bring myself to that. I just can't. And some of my mates can, and God bless them. They've got great opportunities for their children and all that sort of stuff. But they've sacrificed a lot, and more than I've been prepared to. So,
Well,
I think we should all just recognize that the beauty in us is that we have the ability to orientate new and different, and we need to be more curious.
I completely
Yes,
agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, Scott, you always, first of all, I'm pretty sure out of screen you have a really nice, comfortable couch because of the pace and the way that you speak and how you speak. I'm pretty sure even if you don't have a degree in psychiatry or psychology, you can definitely get some patience, my friend. But let me say, you bring up a lot of interesting points, and I want to hang my hat on one of them. When you talked about the feeling, where you put everything out there, because there's a lot of us who live with passion, right? And you can recognize that in someone. It's not the words that they're saying or what have you, but you'll recognize it in the actions. And it's something that I do with my students. And, some parents don't really get this, but when I go into a classroom, I ask the students who want to be here, who wants to participate, and who doesn't. And I give the ones an opportunity that don't want to be here, that don't want to participate, to leave. And then we start working. Because if you don't want to be here, I don't want you to be here either. Right? Because what we get done with you not here, with those kids that's focused, we're going to get so much further with each other. I'm going to learn from them. They're going to learn from me. And we're not spending time doing this remedial behavioral stuff. And I just say that to put it in the context of, in academia, but it's the same thing in a business sense as well, right? It's the same kind of idea. So I just wanted to share that commonality.
So it is, we are going on the 2-hour mark. So I am going to take something away that Level Up likes to do a lot in their show. And I'd like to go around the panel and get a quote, like a personal quote from everybody, say goodbye with, like an inspirational quote that means something to you personally. And because, yeah, it is getting a little late. And I know we all have lives, and Scott's all the way in Australia, for goodness sake. So, and I want to say thank you to everybody.
I'm in your future, so if you don't like me, I'm sorry about tomorrow.
I love that, Scott. Sharon, you're probably going to drop your normal pearl of wisdom, but it's very fitting for this topic, so go for it. Unmute, honey. Sharon, you're muted, honey.
There's two that came to my mind, so I don't know which one you're thinking of.
You can do either one of them, honey.
Well, the first one that came to me tonight was, if you think you can't, you're right. And if you think you can, you're right. And that's a quote by Henry Ford. And it's one that just resonates with me big time.
Absolutely. Dr. Oz? You're muted as well, hon. Unmute. Dr. Oz, unmute.
I was saying, I was still thinking, I'm not quite to my answer yet.
Right.
Yes, give me a sec.
Not a problem. Anastasia, do you have one, or do you want me to share mine first?
So I have a quote by Crystal Beha, and it says, "We by collaborating, working together, we can create more impact."
I think I just said that a little while ago, didn't I? I have two quotes that I constantly am saying. But for this one, actually, I'm going to use both. First, we are perfect in our imperfections. Don't ever let anybody make you second guess yourself and make you feel unworthy. And second, this has been uplifting to me quite a few times over the years, but the saying, the fates whispered to her, "You cannot withstand the storm." She whispered back, "I am the storm." And that's what we all strive to be, is to be able to withstand that storm and rise above. So, Dr. Raz, do you have any pearls of wisdom for us?
So I do have something that's, I guess it's less of a quote, but I think it's two things that go along with this. And one is, trust your gut, right? Just trust your gut.
Absolutely.
Is one. And the second thing is, if you have to ask the question, then you already know the answer. That one's a little more coded, but you get it, right? So if you have to ask, is this wrong? You know it's wrong. So between that and trust your gut are my two.
I absolutely love that. And the whole, if you're wondering if you're making the wrong choice, the answer's right there. I love that because it's true. Trusting your intuition, and it goes right with trusting your intuition. That feeling when you meet someone and they rub you the wrong way and you just don't know why. That's a red flag. I wish I had listened to it when I met my ex. Won't lie. But if I had though, I wouldn't have my two beautiful girls. So gotta weigh that one out there. But at the end of the day, you need to trust your intuition. And I want to say thank you so much for all of you for taking your time out tonight and joining me. Like I know Scott and Anna and Sharon very well, and it has been a wonderful pleasure having you on my panel, Dr. Raz, and getting to know you. And I hope to work with you again. And just, you're amazing. I have to buy Paulette another coffee chat for recommending you for this, because your pearls of wisdom were absolutely amazing and spot on. I look forward to seeing what you come up with next. And as for expose, I know we've got some interviews and stuff set up for the network, don't we, with mental health professionals and things like that? Is that what's coming up next? No, I don't know at all.
Yes. Yeah. There's just the continuation of spreading awareness, and we restarted podcast with mental health professionals, going behind the 15 episodes of documentary series with 88 individuals from 6 continents, with experts like you, therapists, psychologists, and as well people who have been diagnosed with narcissistic. Scott is laughing. Why are you laughing, Scott? You need to tell me.
Oh, I just got your message.
Oh, you get my message. Some message, okay. Yes, so you are able to hear both sides. People who've been through it, survivors, and as well people who have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So there's both views. I'm looking forward to continue watching you, Crystal, celebrating what you're doing, because that's amazing. And I want to just give you back what you're giving.
Crystal, I got a couple things.
All right.
Just 3.
Only?
I'm competitive. In Australia, fun fact, everyone, we've only got 26 million people, and we get really, really shitty when we're not in the top 3 at the Olympics. So just put that in perspective. So I got 3 for you. Firstly, there's a quote that is on my LinkedIn, and it says, "We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are." And I think that's a really important point to start, that our perspectives are very much shaped by our experiences and so forth. The other one is a gift given to me for coaching a young baseball team in Sydney years ago. That's what it looks like. And it says, "You can't steal second base and keep your foot on first." So we can't live in yesterday's stories. Yeah. I love this quote. I love it so much because we often do, right? We often are byproducts of our past experiences, right? But we have to continue to walk ourselves home. And the third thing is, we think that life is really complicated, but it's not. And I teach people about strategic thinking. And one of the things I do is use this tool to explain it. Some of you may be familiar with it. Why? Because I want to remind us all that when it comes to making transition from where we are to where we want to be, if we follow this and we appreciate that we have to move forward, even if it's scary, and we do it with an open mind and an open heart, life gets a whole lot better and the people around us change too. Should I close with a Forrest Gump quote on that?
It depends on which one.
I haven't practiced my accent from Alabama.
Oh God.
What time is in Australia?
Sorry, what time
What
is
time
it?
is it? Yeah.
It is 12:22 p.m. on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow. You're tomorrow. So that's then we're going to close out with Crystal singing tomorrow from Annie. So that's
Yeah, no.
thanks for that, Crystal.
Hey, you know what? Earlier today, I actually was in a YouTube karaoke room with Glitter World, who was in the chat earlier, just trying to kind of unwind and get in a very positive mindset. And music is actually one of my coping mechanisms. Anyway, so because I'm 5, I will own that. I had the mentality of a 5-year-old at times, and you know what? Who cares? I'm me, and that's it. So I love you guys, and you're amazing, and I can't wait to speak with you all again and everything. Now, my beautiful content creator, because Canva and I get into a lot of arguments. Sharon and Anastasia and a bunch of my friends have heard me complaining about this for the last week, that me and Canva don't get along. I hate it with a passion, which is why I have a beautiful Anka who takes care of it for me. She has also created a video for us to leave to. Let me see what she called it. Give me 1 second. Of course, it's called "I Call My Power Back to Me." Now, I have not seen this clip, so I have no idea what she has done, but she is the same woman who designed my book cover for Rise of Crystal Phoenix, and I do trust her complicitly. So, who knows? But
I call my power back to
me. Oh, God. Now, those pretty much everybody knows me. I'm more of a country girl and, rock. So this is going to be interesting. But thank you all for being here with us. And I hope that you learned some things and got some awareness out there. And
Crystal.
Please, yes.
Excuse me for 1 second. Before you play the video, can I just share one more thing that goes along with this whole conversation?
Go for it.
We are all greater than our circumstances.
Well, yeah. You speak louder than anybody on that one. But so thank you guys for taking your time out on your Sunday night and Monday morning, I should as well, and joining us for this panel. And welcome back to social media fully, Miss Anastasia. I know you've been posting and everything, and I'm so glad to see your face again and to see expose moving again. It makes me very happy. You know I love you to death, and I'm just glad you're back. So
thank you for letting me into your home with your friends and family off of a recommendation. I really appreciated and enjoyed myself and learned some things. Thank you all.
Thank you, and I look forward to like I said, to speaking with you and learning more about you, because I generally do trust when Paulette says somebody's a good person and gives me a recommendation, because that woman is amazing between her books and what she's doing with Martha and everything. But she's also very shrewd. She does have a very good judge of character. So if Paulette gives you the stamp of approval, I'm gonna give you a shot, So, and I'm very glad I did. So thank you guys, and thank you everybody in the chat, both here on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Thank you, Scott. It was wonderful to see you again. And Sharon, I just see you all the time. I'm playing with you. I love you. I had to pick on you because we've only talked 5 times today.
It's all good. And thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure being here with all of you. And I know we'll be seeing each other around.
Yeah. So without further ado, I am going to start this wonderful song that my beautiful support team has made, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little frightened, but hey, let's go.
I call my power back to me from every person, place, entity, from every space, portal, time, and dimension, from every connection, attachment, and vessel where I left it. Anyone and anything that is attempting to siphon my energy, you do not have my consent to use my vitality, and I call my power back. I now release that which is not my own. I lay down the weight that doesn't belong to me, as well as the weight that does. I forgive all things, all people, and all others. I forgive myself. I cloak myself in a bright light of protection, impenetrable. I shed light to my shadows and lovingly work through all insecurities, flaws, and self-destructive habits that cause me not to flow in the ways in which I was created to. I honor those parts of myself, and I love them to life. Any and every soul tie is now disconnected. My mind is decluttered, and I see clearly those who no longer serve me and the mindsets attached to them. I take time for self-evaluation to uncover what in me connected me to that energy, and I heal my broken places. I take up space in my own life, and I unapologetically do the same in the rooms that I walk into. My light, my energy speaks for me before I ever open my mouth. I speak those things that are not as though they were, not as if they have never been, but I activate them with my light energy into being from obscurity. My vibration reverberates and pushes away any energy that is not on the same frequency, and I align, knowing that this is all that is required of me. I receive my power back. Ashe.
So once again, I say thank you, everybody, for coming to this very special edition of Life Talks with Crystal Phoenix. And now, please like and subscribe, also to all the channels and to any of the LinkedIn contacts, any of my YouTubers that would like to get a hold of Sharon. You know how to get a hold of me, and I can put you in connection with them. So thank you all very, very much. Really quick, I just want to say I love you all, and everybody on the panel, thank you so much for joining me. I bid you a wonderful good night, and be safe, be happy, and be true to yourselves at all times. Have a wonderful night and, well, day for those of you that are, not in the US. Good night.
Virtual hugs, everyone. Good night.